Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight, where we get to explore Lyme disease and issues that you may be having with it or questions you have about this illness. The way these webinars work, you create them. So every week is a little bit different because they're all based on the questions that you send to me. So how you do that, for those of you that are new, the way you send those questions to me is through the chat box, which is over there on that side of the computer. You write questions and send them to me by hitting the enter key. So keep in mind that each time that you hit the enter key, that sends a separate question in my direction. So as much as possible, write your question as just a big continuous question. It makes it a lot easier for me to follow what's going on then, because I can follow the various parts easier on my side, okay? Now, during the webinar tonight, I am going to post your question up on the screen so others can see it. I will read those questions, though, because in the recorded version, often they're a little bit harder to see. So just be aware that I will be reading these questions out loud tonight, too. So yes, there is going to be a recorded version. That recording will be available tomorrow morning. I have recently been posting those on Facebook, and also I will send you an email in the morning with a link where you can watch it actually online at the Treat Lyme Book website as well, too. Okay. And so you've got two ways you can look at it. You can either find it on my Facebook page, which is treatlyme.net, Facebook/treatlyme. Actually, it's Facebook/treatlyme. That's my Facebook page. Or you can find it at treatlyme.net on the webinars recording page. All right. So those are two ways you can look at it. Look for the email to come out somewhere around 6 to 6:30 a.m. Seattle time. All right. So I think that kind of takes care of the business end of things. So I see a lot of new names on my message board tonight. So that's good to see. I'm glad that the word is getting out about these webinars. But I also see a lot of familiar names too. So for those of you that are coming back again, welcome. I'm glad that you returned, that I am still providing meaningful information for you to improve your treatment. All right. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And so this first question, this is from Tracy. Hi, Tracy. Let's see. In regards to your great article on peripheral thyroid issues, well, thank you for that compliment. I was wondering if you are familiar with Wilson syndrome protocol. Have you seen any success in people who have multiple systemic infectious disease syndrome, MSIDS? That's everyone. That's a term coined by Richard Horowitz, who manages Lyme disease. It's another way of saying chronic Lyme disease with a bunch of other infections added in. Thanks. I hope you know how many lives you might be saving. You're welcome. Thank you. All right. So for those of you that don't know, I did publish an article on thyroid management, pretty comprehensive article, actually. Probably, I think I put it up about maybe about 2 weeks ago or so. And so you might want to take a look at that. That's at treatlyme.net. You'll find it in the chapter called on the hormone chapter. Okay, you'll find it there. But in it, I go through various issues about managing thyroid. I do not mention Wilson syndrome protocol in there. And so everyone, what Wilson syndrome protocol is Dr. Wilson is a physician that came up with a way of managing thyroid, which is to give people progressively increasing amounts of a form of thyroid called T3 thyroid and raise that steadily until a person had a temperature that became normal. And then leave them at that level of dosing for a while and eventually drop it back down. And what his theory is that for some people with thyroid illness, what happens is as a result of low thyroid, that changes how your thyroid gland and all of your tissues function, basically. And at lower temperatures, enzymes that are involved in our chemical reactions and enzymes that are involved in making thyroid, that at lower body temperatures, those enzymes don't perform well. They lose their shape, they perform incorrectly, and those enzymes are needed to help generate energy and are involved in chemical reactions in the body, all right? So what his idea is that if you raise thyroid to a level that you get body temperature back into normal range, that those enzymes will start functioning correctly. Chemicals in the body that are protein based will start functioning correctly. And then as you come off the thyroid will be programmed now to run correctly, basically. Okay. It's kind of a simplified way of looking at his theory. I have tried it before in Lyme disease, and I just haven't had great success with it, unfortunately, Tracy. So I manage thyroid, as I write about in that article. Those are ways that I have found effective in chronic Lyme disease. So I'm not a big believer in Wilson syndrome as it works within, or the Wilson syndrome protocol as it works within people that have Lyme disease. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question. And good luck to you. Hello, Maria Eve. Let's see. Cavitations. Just heard cavitations can exist even when wisdom teeth haven't been removed. Always had pain there and thought was consequence of Lyme. Can it be because needing to be taken care of? All right. So cavitations, everyone, are little cavities or caves that develop underneath the teeth, basically. And yeah, they can develop at wisdom teeth. They can develop if you've had root canals before. Sometimes they'll develop too. There are some dentists that are skilled with their x-ray machines at being able to tell whether you have cavitations. The thing about cavitations is that there is the possibility that Lyme can live in cavitations. And it can be hard to get rid of Lyme if you have Lyme living in cavitations, okay? So some of the dentists that treat cavitations actually will treat those by injecting ozone or hydrogen peroxide into them. Those are things that can kill Lyme and cavitations. Some would advocate even removing teeth, okay? I generally am not going to do too much about cavitations unless I've got patients that are not getting better and I start wondering, do they have Lyme hiding out in those cavitations? That generally is when I'm going to wind up doing something about it, all right? So anyhow, it could be a place that Lyme is living that is making it difficult for you to get over your illness, all right? Okay, good luck to you. Let's see. Another one from Marie Eva. See, looking for cost-effective way to detox heavy metals and toxins. What about laser detox? So I actually don't know about laser detox, so I'm unable to make a comment about that. I'm not familiar with that way of detoxing. Yeah, I guess, Marie, I'm not going to spend, because I already answered one question from you too, and I want to get to some of the other ones. I would take a look at my chapter on detox where I talk about ways to detox heavy metals and ways to detox in general, okay? So that chapter is in the Treat Lyme book. Let me just show you where to find that real quick. So generally, what I try to do in these webinars, I try not to do more than. I'm not going to answer your question in more detail here. That way, everyone gets a chance to ask something. So anyhow, this is the Treat Lyme book, and at treatlyme.net. Take a look, and there's chapters. I've organized it into chapters, and there is a chapter I have on detoxification. Just click on that, and you'll see the various articles I have, including one on heavy metal detox and just ones on general detox. And that may give you some ideas. Okay? All right. All right. So there we are again. All right, Marie. Good luck to you. Hello, Sandy. Let's see. Are you having good results using LDI treatment with your patients? No, I'm not. So I'm not doing it much anymore. So LDI, everyone, is a way of regulating the immune system to fight Lyme. And it involves using very, very diluted drops where the Lyme germs are diluted so many times that they are barely in there, may not even be in there at all. And what this can do is this can alter a balance between something called Th1 and Th2 inflammation. And it can sometimes be helpful, but I've just had disappointing results. I find that it's very hard to regulate. I find that sometimes people get a lot worse on it. And for the majority of people, I haven't had good benefits. I'm just not doing it much anymore. If you want more information about what LDI is with greater explanation than I just did, there is an article that I have written about it in the immune system chapter in the Treat Lyme book. Okay, but to answer your question directly, I'm not having that good of results with it. Okay, all right. LDI stands for low dose immunotherapy. All right. Hello, Jackie. Let's see. I got bitten by a tick on my left upper arm approximately 9 years ago. I got really sick 4 years ago and 90% better. Have had random swollen arm, tender breast on the left side, which usually clears. Lately, my left breast is now continually sore without the left arm swelling. What are your thoughts on this? So my thoughts are, make sure you check out common things that can give left breast pain that are not Lyme related, actually. I haven't seen Lyme isolate symptom-wise just to the left breast, okay? So you should be evaluated by your primary care doctor or your gynecologist for breast pain. And what they, at least I think you didn't say chest, you said breast. You need to be evaluated for causes of that. So they need to do a breast exam on you, maybe even consider doing mammogram, for instance, too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Jackie. Hello, Donna. Hi, Dr. Ross. I'm taking your probiotic 1 time a day, Ceftin 2 times, curcumin, ashwagandha, and magnesium. Do you think I need to take nystatin for yeast? I was on it previously with Malarone and azithromycin, and I have digestive issues after eating. Thanks. Okay. So, when you're on antibiotics, as you know, and the major antibiotic you're on right now is the Ceftin, also known as cefuroxime. Any antibiotics that we take, even herbal antibiotics actually, have a chance of knocking down good bacteria that lines the intestines, all right? And if you knock down the good bacteria that lines the intestines, that allows yeast that live there to grow too much. And where that becomes a problem is if yeast grow too much, they release toxins that can give you neurologic symptoms, for instance, okay? And also the immune system will see them and react by making inflammation chemicals called cytokines. And when you have Lyme, your immune system is already making too many cytokines. It's the cytokines that really give you all your Lyme symptoms. So if you get too many yeast in your intestines, that triggers more cytokines to be made, which can look like Lyme disease, basically, all right? So you want to prevent that. One way to prevent it is definitely being on probiotics. There's a number of probiotics I recommend. If you're doing the HMF Forte, I would do 2 to 4 pills 1 time a day. If you are using Prescript Assist Pro or Core Biotic, which are spore-forming probiotics, I would do those as 2 pills 1 time a day, for instance, okay? Now, sometimes that can be enough, even though you're on antibiotics, to prevent yeast. However, I have not found that always to be so. So generally, when I have somebody on an antibiotic, in addition to doing probiotics, I want to do something to kill the yeast too, and something that doesn't go systemic and hurt you, or could possibly be toxic, I should say. And so I like using nystatin. So nystatin is a prescription medicine that you would take as 2 pills twice a day. It stays in the intestines. It is not systemically absorbed, so you don't have increased toxicity from it, okay? An alternative to that could be to go herbal. And I like using 2 different products. One is something called Phytostan, which has a mixture of herbs in it. One of those is caprylic acid. It's got some rosemary. It's got some thyme oil, undolenic acid, I believe it's got in it. Anyhow, that's a nice blend. You do 2 pills twice a day. There's another product I like using from Karuna called Capri Plus. That's CAPRI Plus. Capri Plus. That has caprylic acid in it, garlic, and rosemary oil in it. That's 2 pills twice a day. You can use that also in addition to what you're doing here. But I would do more if you're on. I just find it better when you're on a prescription antibiotic, especially to try to do probiotics and some kind of a yeast killer like a nystatin or a Capri Plus or a Phytostan. Okay. All right. Now, if you're on herbal antibiotics like a Cemento or a Banderol, a toba bark extract, cat's claw, endographis, any of those, often I find just using probiotics alone is going to be enough. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Donna. Hello, Nina. Let's see. Hi, Marty. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Let's see. I'm wondering if and how you would include 44% CBD oil into a Lyme protocol with Banderol Cemento, 2 month on, 2 month off pulsing for chronic Lyme with neurologic symptoms. Is it overkill? Does it improve efficacy, speed, or slow down healing? Okay. So CBD oil, everyone, is CBD or cannabinoid oil comes from two major sources. One, you're either going to get it from marijuana plants or you're going to get it from hemp. Okay, and in hemp, if it is sold as a hemp extract, it can here in the states. It is legal to do hemp CBD as long as it's hemp that I think has less than 0.3% THC. Okay, THC is the chemical in marijuana that gets people high, and CBD from marijuana is going to come from the green parts of the plant, so the stems and the leaves, versus the bud of the plant, which is what people use recreationally. That's rich in THC. But depending on where you go to get your CBD, if it's coming from marijuana, there usually is going to be various percentages of THC with it. Okay, so I just want to make that distinction. All right. Now, CBD, THC influence a part of our neurologic system, a system called the ecocannabinoid system. I may be saying that wrong. I was stumble on it. But we have a part of our neurologic system that actually responds to these. And so it can be useful, either THC or CBD can be useful for helping with symptoms that we see in Lyme, like the pain, nausea, the neuropathies that people get, loss of appetite, headaches, insomnia. These are things that it can be very useful at helping with, whether you're doing CBD with THC or just more pure CBD. Okay. Now, there have been some petri dish experiments that were done by Ernie Murakami and his group up in British Columbia. Ernie's a physician that treated Lyme but lost his license for treating Lyme, unfortunately. But he's carried on great work. He's done a good job of educating a lot of the naturopathic physicians in Canada to treat Lyme. And others, anyone that wants to listen to him, it's good. He's really knowledgeable source. But he's helped. I think he conducted or he was behind the conduct of some experiments looking at marijuana and CBD as a killer of Lyme. And on petri dish experiments, it looks like it can kill Lyme. Now, in the real world, do I think it really does an effective job? I don't think so. I don't think it's a useful killer. Keep in mind, I live in a state where we can use medicinal marijuana. Okay, so if my patients are on CBD, they're usually going to be getting it from marijuana plants, or they may be on a mix of CBD and THC. Okay, but when I work with patients that are on those, I tend not to see improvement. I don't think I'm seeing it act as an effective killer of Lyme. But I do think that CBD or CBD with various amounts of THC mixed in can be useful for managing symptoms like getting sleep and managing pain. So how do I feel about you adding it into a pulse regimen where you're on and off? I think it's okay to do it. On a pulse regimen, generally during the time people are off the antibiotics, I'm hoping that the germ comes out of hibernation that gets caused by being on antibiotics continuously, so that it comes out of cyst forms, gets back more into a growth state, so that when you go back on the antibiotics like Banderol Cemento, the herbal antibiotics, that they'll work more effectively. But I don't think the CBD has enough of a killing effect to interfere with that benefit of pulsing. Okay. All right, Nina. So if part of your question is you're worried about using it in a period you're supposed to be off the herbal antibiotics like Banderol Cemento, again, during the off period, we want your Lyme germ to get more active so that when you go back on, they can kill better. I don't think you hurt by doing that. I don't think you hurt yourself by doing that. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Nina. And thank you for that question. So this next, I'm needing to do more research about CBD and about THC, and I'm starting to gather information because I'm going to be putting together an article for the Treat Lyme book, and my intentions are that will come out within the next month. Many of you may be familiar. They just sent out a number of updates to the Treat Lyme book that I sent out a newsletter a couple days ago. So I suspect by the time I send out the next newsletter that I will have accomplished getting a bunch of information together about CBD and THC. And I'll try to make it into a concise article that will give more information as well, too. Okay? So take a look for that coming up soon. All right. Let's see. Next question here. Hello, Jan. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. I've had a relapse of Babesia and am starting Malarone. What can I add? When can I add Biocide into the mix as well as artemisinin? I need to take it slow as I'm 78. All help is appreciated. Okay. So if what you're trying to treat is just Babesia and not Lyme and not yeast, where I would go next is I would add your artemisinin. But keep in mind, actually, Malarone by itself can be a very effective agent at treating Babesia. In my experience, I find that Malarone works about 85% of the time. So Malarone, everyone, is a treatment you can use for Babesia. It has two chemicals in it, actually. It's got something called atovaquone, and it's got a quinine derivative called proquinil. It is something that can work effectively on its own to treat Babesia. If you want to make it stronger, you can add the artemisia and artemisinin in, but I would probably focus on that first. And then if you want to add something, if you do have active Lyme, then I probably would add your Biocidin as a third thing. Okay, I would add it after you've done that. That's kind of the order that I think I would go in with you there, Jan. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. All right. So everyone, if you're wondering what Biocidin is, it's I actually have a whole article on it in the Treat Lyme book. And actually, let me show it to you here so you can see it later. And it's actually, this is something you can read without. It is in my chapters, in various chapters, but one place you can find it is in this chapter called Anti-Germs. And here's the article, Biocidin, a potent antimicrobial and biofilm breaker. Okay, so Biocidin, and the only reason I'm mentioning it is because you asked about it, and I know that I've written about it too, so you can find information about it here. The it to work quite effectively. Petri dish experiments would suggest that it can treat Lyme effectively. It can remove Lyme biofilm. It also can treat yeast and remove yeast biofilm. And it may be effective also at limiting a defense mechanism that Lyme has, which is Lyme has these things called efflux pumps, where it literally pumps antibiotics back out of the inside of the germ, all right? And so it may be a way of helping alter some of the antibiotic resistance that Lyme can develop too. The Petri dish experiments are quite compelling. How it works in people, so far I'm seeing good results with it too. So that's what Biocidin is. So if you want to take a look at that article later, I have much more information in that article about the benefits of Biocidin. All right? All right. Let me go back here. Hello, Craig. Let's see. If one is off antibiotics but still treating for Lyme, should I still be avoiding things like kefir and kombucha to avoid yeast overgrowth? Is it only concern while on antibiotics? It's interesting. I tend not to see kefir and kombucha leading to yeast overgrowth. I just want to let you know that. So I think you'd be okay doing either one of those, actually. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Craig. Thank you for that question. Hello, Janie. Let's see. Do you think with having Lyme, it could cause primary biliary cirrhosis? What can be done? So everyone, primary biliary cirrhosis means that the bile duct and the tubes that come out of the liver that carry bile from the liver and toxins from the liver out into the intestines, that's the bile system, or biliary system, that those tubes get inflamed and get scarred. And that can lead to narrowing of the opening, okay, which can lead to even liver problems and even pancreas problems, for instance, too. So the reason it's called primary biliary cirrhosis is that we think it occurs on its own that it is not caused by something else. All right. So I have never seen a person with Lyme and primary biliary cirrhosis. So, and I've been treating Lyme since 2004. So I'm doubtful that it is a cause. Now, anything is possible, okay? But primary biliary cirrhosis means there's not an outside cause. So we tend to think of it as it is something probably that happens more as a genetic setup that a person might have for having the illness, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Janie. Thank you for the question. Hello, Donna. Let's see. Does liposomal glutathione and alpha lipoic acid take mercury from your fillings? I also have Giant Turco titanium coils in my heart from a PDA that was surgically fixed when I was 16. Would this do anything to this as well? You know, okay, so glutathione and alpha lipoic acid are both rich in sulfur, okay? And sulfur attracts heavy metals. All right, so it's possible that we could even use these as a natural way to do heavy metal detox. So heavy metals are attracted to sulfur. Okay, they'll try to bind to it, all right? But these are weak, very weak chelators. I don't use them as primary chelators. In other words, chemicals I would use to bind up heavy metals, okay? Now, the thing about mercury fillings in your mouth, when you have mercury fillings in your mouth, when you are chewing, that can cause the mercury that ages over time to break down, giving you a gas that forms above your teeth. Literally, you get mercury vapors when you chew, when you have mercury fillings, all right? And the way that stuff then becomes a problem is we swallow it in, we drink those vapors in, and they get absorbed into our system, and we can develop extra levels of mercury in us, all right? But if you are just swallowing alpha lipoic acid and you are just swallowing a glutathione, I don't think that they have enough contact with your teeth that is not developed a vapor cloud, because you're right in the moment, you're not chewing, to actually leach heavy metals out of them. I think that the chances of that happening are extremely remote to non-existent, okay? So I think you'd be okay doing it. Now, boy, in terms of your titanium coil, I have to say, I honestly don't know. I would not know the answer to that question, all right? Nor do I think I've seen any studies looking at that as well, too, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Donna. Hello, Jackie. Let's see. Good evening, doctor. 8 years ago, I had constant agonizing migraines, neck pain, extreme pressure in my head with severe noise and light sensitivity. I had to drop out of college, stop reading and driving, put life on hold for 3 years. After receiving Lyme-Barr diagnosis, I procrastinated treatment, fearing, there's a second part here, a bad herx would cause me to fall apart. I assumed I would not get worse since I moved from apartment with mold. Can it spread to other organs after 2 decades? Every day, pain, exhaustion, cannot function until evening. If I am lucky, recently a few seizures. Is it possible for my health to not decline on meds, or is falling apart inevitable at this stage? Also, hypothetically, after a while on treatment, might I be able to stop all Lyme medications to become pregnant? Or would you advise a woman with Lyme most of her life to wait until treatment is complete to carry a healthy baby? Many concerns. Grateful. All right. Okay, Jackie. So there's a lot of parts to your question here. So first of all, Lyme actually, even early on, I mean, there's studies that would suggest it spreads within hours throughout the whole body. So it even gets into the brain, okay? So waiting 8 years to get your treatment does not mean it has spread any further. It probably has already been spread throughout your body for a long time, all right? Does it make it harder to treat? Maybe, but I see sometimes people that have had this thing in them for multiple years that get better quickly, and there's other people that it just takes a long time. So an average length of treatment for the Lyme germ, when a Lyme germ is in somebody and it's chronic Lyme, can be 2 years. That's an average. That means that some people improve after 6 months of treatment. Some people are in the 3 to 4 year plan. Okay. Does everybody get a bad herx? Not necessarily. There's about 10% of people that I treat in my practice that don't have herxes. And then the degree of herxing depends on the person. There's some people that herx is a few days of feeling bad, and then they just go right on. All right. So in terms of, are you going to get knocked down? Not necessarily. The only way to know is step into treatment and find out. If you want to prevent getting knocked down, I suggest some of the steps that I suggest to limit cytokines, okay? And you can read about those in my treatment protocol. It's the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. You can find it in the Treat Lyme book, okay? I'll show it to you here in a minute. But there I talk about using curcumin to limit herx reactions. Also within the Treat Lyme book, using glutathione. And there are other herbs you can use to limit herx reactions. You would want to be on those during your treatment. Okay, so I'll show you those 2 articles that I just mentioned here in a minute. All right, so you can limit your herx reactions. You can control it. Okay, and not everyone herxes. 10% of people don't, in my experience. And even if you don't herx, you can still get well. You don't have to herx to get better. Okay, all right. In terms of pregnancy, there was a registry kept out in the East Coast here in the States in the late 80s, early 90s, looking at women that had Lyme and trying to see what would happen with their children. And in this registry, they collected information about the baby and the mother during and after pregnancy. And what they found is that women that have Lyme and were on antibiotics during pregnancy had a transmission rate of 0%. But women that were not on an antibiotic during their pregnancy had a transmission rate of 50%, 50%, okay? All right, so the thing that we can't tell from that I haven't been able to see from any of the data is so anyway, what that data would suggest is if you have Lyme, that it can be transmitted during pregnancy unless you're on an antibiotic, okay? Now, no one that I can see has ever done research, though, that looked at the question of, once your Lyme is in remission, meaning it's still in you, but you feel healthy. Once your Lyme is in remission, do people that have Lyme in remission can it spread during pregnancy to a baby if you're not on antibiotics? No one's done those studies. I don't know whether if you are pregnant and your Lyme is more symptomatic, does it have a greater chance of spreading in pregnancy than if you don't have symptoms, okay? So my recommendation usually for women that I treat that have Lyme or had active Lyme at one time, because there's no way to prove that we ever get every germ out of you. I think for most people when we treat, the best we're doing is we're just knocking the germ down to the point the immune system can control it. I think that the germs will remain in you even after a Lyme treatment. I think the best we're doing is controlling them, okay, or getting them knocked down so the immune system will control it. So therefore, the germs may still be in you. Therefore, there's a chance you could transmit during pregnancy, even if you feel healthy, all right? So my advice usually to women that want to get pregnant with their Lyme is you can get pregnant. You definitely want to be on at least one antibiotic that will prevent transmission over the placenta. And there's articles I've written about that in the Treat Lyme book if you're wondering what those antibiotics are. And essentially by doing that, when I have a woman that has active Lyme, I've never seen transmission. And in women that don't have active Lyme, I've never seen transmission as long as they're on an antibiotic. At least that's what my practice has been to do here, and my practice here at the Healing Arts Partnership, okay? All right. So I hope that answers some of your questions. Let me show you some resources you can look at later then too. All right, so I'm going back to the Treat Lyme treatment protocol for Lyme. And I'm calling it the Ross Lyme Support Protocol. I have renamed this from what I used to call it. Anyhow, take a look here. I described the essential steps that you want to take in a Lyme disease treatment, okay? And one of the steps, so for instance, get sleep. The reason you want to get sleep is to restore your immune system, but also it lowers cytokines. I talk about what I think is a better diet to be on when you have Lyme, which is kind of a paleo diet, okay? But finally here, part 3 of my treatment protocol is about controlling cytokines. It's because when you control cytokines, which are inflammatory chemicals that are made by the immune system when it sees Lyme, and also made by the immune system when it sees dead bug parts. In other words, a Herx reaction is actually increased cytokines. You want to control them. And my favorite thing to use is curcumin, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. But there are other things you can use, okay? So there is another article I've written. I'm going to click on it right here. It's called Control Cytokines, a guide to fix Lyme symptoms and the immune system. Okay, so why did I put immune system in that? Well, actually, let me go back. I'll hold on a minute. I'm going to go back so you can see me here, and I'll talk about cytokines here in a minute. But that's the article you want to look at that gives you a lot of ideas of things you can take to limit cytokines. Okay, all right, and then finally, I have a chapter about pregnancy. Here it is. And in here, I talk about things like, can it be sexually transmitted? I talk about Lyme in pregnancy. Will my baby get it? What about my health? And things you can do to prevent getting it. Okay. So take a look at those articles as well, too. All right. All right. So let me go back here. Okay. So let me just talk briefly about what cytokines are. Okay. So cytokines are good and bad. They're made by white blood cells when they see a toxin, or they see yeast, or they see Lyme. And what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to turn the immune system on and take care of those. But in Lyme, sometimes in yeast, and sometimes in mold toxicity issues, the immune system doesn't do a good job, and it keeps trying harder and harder, and eventually it makes too many cytokines. And too many cytokines give you Lyme symptoms, all right? So they disturb the sleep centers. They can make it so you can't think. They make you hurt all over. They give you fatigue. Essentially, what we call Lyme symptoms are too many cytokine symptoms. But the other thing that they do is they suppress the immune system. Okay, so here's something that's supposed to turn the immune system on, but made in excess, it suppresses the immune system, all right? So you want to control cytokines during your treatment with the curcumin I mentioned, or some of the other ways I mentioned in my Treat Lyme book, because you're doing that to help boost your immune system, all right? So one of the key components to boosting your immune system, there's two: get sleep, lower your cytokines, all right? Yeah, and you can do other things. You could be mushrooms, you could be on transfer factors, but those are the two key components, all right? So that's why that article on cytokines talks about boosting the immune system too, okay? All right, so what's a Herxheimer reaction? Well, in a Herxheimer reaction, your immune system, in killing Lyme, you kill Lyme, toxins from the germ gets released and dead bug parts get released, okay? And the immune system sees that and makes more cytokines, okay? So what a Herxheimer reaction is a cytokine surge as in a response to killing of the Lyme germs. So you need to do things to manage the cytokines, basically. All right? So take a look at those articles. That'll give you some good information about that. All right. Good luck, and thank you for your multi-pronged question there. Hello, Christine. Hello, and thank you for these webinars. With their help, I am piecing together new approaches for working on my post TBI recovery and program. The past month, I have developed numbness in mostly my right fingertips. A few weeks ago, you mentioned some supplements which included magnesium, which might... Let's see. I think here's the second part of your question. Help, please list them and dosage and frequency. I think they were addressed as nerve damage in my case, post-aggressive treatment with both Flagyl and Tindamax in the past. Also, do you remember the name of the anthropologist and their book you mentioned a while back, Studying Shamanism? Okay, all right. So regarding shamanism, which is a way of working with the spirits to affect healing, the anthropologist that teaches about shamanism and has written about shamanism is a gentleman named Michael Harner. It's Harner. And so Michael Harner. And his foundation is called shamanism.org. Okay. And I know I talked briefly about that before. All right. All right. So then in terms of the supplements or recommendations I have about nerve damage. Okay, so first of all, if you have been on Flagyl, or which is metronidazole, or Tindamax, which is tinidazole, both of those can interfere with B6 metabolism in nerves, leading to neuropathy. So sometimes the solution when somebody has a neuropathy after being on Tindamax and also, which is tinidazole, or metronidazole, which is Flagyl, is to do some B6 at about 50 milligrams twice a day. All right. Now, when you're doing B6, you have to periodically check your B6 levels, though, because you can develop B6 toxicity, and B6 toxicity can lead to neuropathy too. So I just want to point that out as well too. Okay, so you got to be careful with your B6. But if you have not, what you might want to do with your neuropathy you described here, having been on metronidazole and having been on tinidazole, would be to get your doctor to do a B6 level. If it's normal, you might want to try a 1-month trial of B6, 50 milligrams twice a day, to see if it benefits that neuropathy. Okay, so that's one thing to do. Second thing I like to do to repair nerve injury is to rebuild the nerve cell membrane and also fix the energy factory membrane found in every one of our cells and in nerves, called mitochondria. And what rebuilds that nerve cell membrane and the covering of your mitochondria is a product called NT factor energy. And you would do 2 pills of that 3 times a day for 2 months. And then after 2 months, you decrease it to 1 pill 3 times a day. All right. So NT factor energy is made up of the fats that make up nerve cell membranes and also your mitochondria membranes. By some estimates, there's 300 to 400 mitochondria in a cell. Inside mitochondria, sugar and fat are burned through a bunch of chemical reactions into cell fuel. When you have chronic infection, there's an overproduction of oxidizing agents in the body that can damage the covering of the mitochondria. Therefore, you get injury to how well the mitochondria can generate energy. And if they can't generate enough energy, then your nerves can't heal because there's not enough energy for them to heal. Okay? All right. And it just so happens the same things that we use to rebuild the mitochondria membrane that saturate the mitochondria membrane with healthy fats, which is the NT factor. To saturate the mitochondria membrane with healthy fat, they first have to saturate the nerve cell membrane. So you're fixing your nerve cell membrane as you're getting ready to fix as you're fixing the mitochondria membrane as well too, okay? Second thing you want to do is be on glutathione. Glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant that is made in every one of our cells. It helps fix things, but it fixes from the inside. The NT factor is fixing from the outside. The glutathione would fix from the inside. I like using a liposomal variety of glutathione, and for that, I like using a research nutritionals product called Trifortify Orange or Trifortify Watermelon. You would want to do 5 milliliters of that, which is a teaspoon, 1 time a day. All right. The other thing you ought to look at doing is to be on coenzyme Q10, 400 milligrams twice a day. That's used to carry electrons around the inside of your mitochondria, which helps create that energy. All right. And if you are if you don't eat meat, you ought to be on some acetyl L-carnitine. I like using a Thorne product called Carnitil for that. Carnitine is the transport vehicle that carries fat from the outside of the mitochondria to the inside. And if you are a non-meat eater, you are not going to have enough carnitine, and that can lead to mitochondria fatigue as well too, okay? Now, one word about, and the way you do that's 500 milligrams twice a day for 1 month, and then I decrease it to 500 milligrams 1 time a day after that, okay? All right. Now, a word of caution about coenzyme Q10. If you are on Malarone or you are on Mepron, which is atovaquone, you do not want to do CoQ10 because it will interfere with how the atovaquone works in both of those and make it hard to get rid of your babesia, okay? All right. Now, I'm going to show everyone a screen share here real quick. I'm going to show you the article where I've written about all of this in great detail. So again, if you ever have questions, you don't have to wait for the webinars. You can probably find your questions here in the Treat Lyme book. Take a look in the chapters. There's a section called Brain and Nerves. Just click on that, And in here, I have an article called Neuropathy Repair, Heal That Tingling, Numbness, and Pain, all right, where it lays out those ideas that I was just talking with you about, okay? All right, let me go back here. Good luck to you. And I hope I got enough of it. I know I didn't find I don't know if I found all parts of your question, but I think I found enough of it, hopefully, to answer your question there. All right, let's see. Hello, Donna. Let's see. Oh, I got to post that. Hold on here just a minute. Can you recommend anything for belching gas with pressure and shortness of breath, usually after eating? Um, so, belching is gas that's being formed in the stomach, and it can have a variety of reasons. One is possibly is from intestinal yeast, okay? But usually that's not going to occur right at that kind of gasiness from intestinal yeast is going to go down. It's not going to come up. In other words, you're going to be farting a lot more, all right? Belching usually means it's coming from the small intestine or the stomach area. Probably what I would consider trying for that is some digestive enzymes, things that will help break down food a little bit better, all right? And so digestive enzymes, you would want to take a couple of them before meals 3 times a day. Give that a try to see if that will help. If that doesn't help, you may want to talk to your practitioner about being checked out and evaluated for something called small intestine bacteria overgrowth, where there's a condition where bacteria from your large intestines move up into the small intestines, and that can create a lot of gasiness as well too. There's a breath test that you have to do to see if you might have that condition, okay? A digestive enzyme that I like to use is a product called Similase. It's made by Integrative Therapeutics, and I usually have people do 2 pills of that 3 times a day before meals, and often that's going to be enough to take care of that problem for you, okay? All right. Good luck to you, Donna. Thank you for that question. Hello, B. Let's see. Diagnosed with Lyme, Morgellons, and Bart. Taking rifampin, Bactrim DS, and clarithromycin all twice a day. Metronidazole, 500 milligrams twice a day for 3 days in a row and off for 4 days. Am I adequately covered? And does Lyme cause elevated liver enzymes? Is that a concern? Thanks for all you do. Thank you for that question. So first of all, this regimen that you're on, the rifampin and Bactrim combination and the clarithromycin, that's a triple antibiotic regimen that can help with Bartonella, okay? The rifampin for Lyme can treat cyst Lyme and intracellular Lyme. The clarithromycin can treat spirochete Lyme and intracellular Lyme. So between the 2 of those, you've covered all 3 forms of the germ, all right? So Lyme lives in you in 3 states. You have to cover all 3 of those. And that combination of rifampin, clarithromycin does that. Bactrim, according to some Petri dish experiments, may help something called persister cells that can develop. And a persister cell is a form of the spirochete form of Lyme and a form of cyst form of Lyme that slow their metabolism way down and just start ignoring antibiotics. Okay, that's called a persister. There's some Petri dish experiments coming out of Hopkins that suggest that Bactrim may help with that. Okay, so that Bactrim that you're also using as part of your BART treatment may be helping Lyme, at least in terms of persister cells. All right. The metronidazole that you're on is a way of treating cyst Lyme, and I don't think you need to be on it. And the reason I wouldn't do it is rifampin and it both can treat cyst Lyme, and that combination is pretty hard on your liver. Both rifampin individually and metronidazole individually can inflame the liver, and that is not a combination I like to run at the same time because it can lead to a lot of liver inflammation. So I would probably drop the metronidazole. You don't need it because this combination is treating your cyst form of Lyme anyhow, okay? All right, so then to your question, can Lyme elevate liver enzymes? Yes, it can, but the problem is with this regimen, if you've got elevated liver enzymes, it's probably coming from the metronidazole, and it's probably coming from that in combination with the rifampin. All right? For elevated liver enzymes, some things you can do would be to try to decrease them. You can do that by raising glutathione, the Trifortify that I mentioned earlier, 5 milligrams one time a day. Another option would be to try the building blocks that raise glutathione. That would be to take alpha lipoic acid as about 200 milligrams 3 times a day, or 350 milligrams twice a day, and use something called N-acetylcysteine, which Thorne has as a product called Cysteplus, Cysteplus. That's their NAC. And NAC is a building block also for glutathione, so we can raise it. So as an alternative to doing glutathione, you could do a combination of alpha lipoic acid and N-acetylcysteine to help support your liver too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. All right, I'm just going to do a quick screen share here, everyone. All right. Take a look at to figure out what antibiotics work best for what, because I've kind of been pointing that out tonight, all right? But I have a whole chapter called Infection Treatment Plans, all right? So for instance, in here is a whole article about suggestions I have for treating chronic viruses and even diagnosing it. I have an article here called Kills Babesia, a brief guide, which is the recommendations that of ways I find effective to treat Babesia. It includes herbs and prescriptions. There's an article called Kills Bartonella, a brief guide, which is my recommendations for herbs or prescriptions. And I can even give you the odds by which they're going to work, okay? My article of the season, Kills This Cold and Flu Package, keep it on hand for fast results. This is how you deal with this time of year, so you don't get the flu, or you can deal with the flu when you get it, for instance, or any virus, all right? Here's my article on killing, what do I think is effective against yeast? And then I have a whole article, my Lyme disease antibiotic guide, all right? So if you notice tonight, I've talked a number of times about this is what I cover, this germ and those many forms of Lyme, or I want to use at least 2 antibiotics for rifampin. Read more about it in those articles. You're going to see lots of choices that you have, okay? All right. Thank you for that question. All right. Hello, Judy. Hold on here just a second. Let's see. Thank you for sharing your time and knowledge. You're welcome. Recently tested low on methylation and B2, B9, B12. Have done the Cowden program for 9 months. What are your thoughts? Thank you so much. Love to watch and learn from your videos. Thanks. You're welcome. I'm glad to be helping people. So regarding the B2, B9, B12, I would get, I would supplement if you are low, okay? In terms of methylation, though, for the B12, you would want to do a methylated form of B12. So you want to do something called methylcobalamin. The B9 and B2 do not necessarily need to be methylated, okay? In terms of the Cowden protocol, I generally don't find it to be that effective, unfortunately. I think there are 2 parts of it that I really do appreciate, and that's their Cemento, which is cat's claw, and another product called Banderol, which is Otoba bark extract, all right? And Cowden would have you do various starting and stopping of those. What I find, though, is that those 2 herbs together will work about 85 to 90% of the time effectively to kill Lyme, all right? So they work pretty well. They work about as the same as any prescription antibiotic combination. But I don't do the starting and stopping that Cowden does. I'll use them for even 6 months, 9 months, 12 months sometimes, okay? I do not rotate in the annula or the other herbs that he has mentioned in there. And if you don't have Bartonella, you should not necessarily need to be doing the Houttuynia that he recommends in there. So I think his protocol is a little heavy-handed actually for some people, because it has things in it that you don't need. You don't need to treat everybody with Bartonella with Houttuynia, for instance, okay? But I do think his best components are the cat's claw and Otoba bark extract products that he has. And I think those can be quite effective. And that the reason I started using those 2 is based on Petri dish experiments that came out about about 6 years ago now that showed that on Petri dish, at least, there's great killing of all three forms of the Lyme germ and even a great removal of about 100% of biofilm. That led me to start trying these two together on my patients. And what I find is they work about 85 to 90% of the time, which is better than just the cat's claw alone. For instance, I used to use cat's claw alone, and I didn't find it worked with that kind of success. I found it worked maybe 40 or 50% of the time, but coupling in that with the Otoba bark, it works quite well. Now, the reason I'm telling you that kind of detail is I know that Buhner, as in Buhner herbs, does not necessarily recommend the Otoba bark banderol. He does in his protocol recommend cat's claw. Buhner doesn't recommend Otoba though because he says there's not enough evidence on it. And I agree, there's not a lot of science behind it. Okay, but what I am sharing with you is clinically what I see. That is, that combination can be a really good treatment. Buhner, as in Buhner herbs, does not recommend it because he's basing most of his recommendations are based on things that he can find a lot of science about. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Let's see here. Hello, Scott. Let's see. I have terrible pressure in back of my head. I guess around my C1 or C2 area. Is this Bartonella or Lyme symptom? Is there anything I can do to help with the uncomfortable feeling? So neck pain, pressure pain back in this area, that is most often a symptom we see as part of Lyme. Not necessarily Bartonella, but more. If you're just going to ask me, somebody has neck pain back here, what is it part of? I'm generally thinking it's part of Lyme. All right. Things that you could do for it is magnesium can sometimes help relax those muscles. And you would want to do it, the magnesium, I usually will dose somewhere between 400 and 600 milligrams. Keep in mind, if you start getting above that range, you start getting into diarrhea. If you try 600 milligrams at bedtime and you get diarrhea, then you want to back it down too. Okay, magnesium in high amounts can give diarrhea. That level of magnesium, I think, is safe to use in Lyme. I don't think it abnormally feeds the germ. Some people ask me questions periodically because they've seen evidence that says magnesium feeds the germ. I don't think it does at that level. So that's one thing I would add. If you're still having a lot of head pressure, head pain in that area, you might even try to do some of the prescriptive muscle relaxers like a Flexeril can be useful at times too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Scott. Hello, Katrina. Good evening, Dr. Ross. When one is diagnosed with Lyme, mold, parasites all at once, what is the protocol? Thanks. Depends on which one's causing most of the problems. And I know that sounds kind of a loose way of saying it, okay? But I'm going to make my decision based on the history that I take of the person. So, for instance, if I've got a patient that had a tick bite multiple years ago, and they move into a house that has mold, and it's in the house with mold that they get sick, I'm probably going to treat for mold first. Because it may be that the Lyme, even though they test positive for it, is just hanging out. The immune system is doing a great job controlling it. But it really is the mold toxicity, that those mold toxins that are trapped in the person, that's triggering the cytokines, okay? Or if I've got somebody that was doing pretty well, they've got mold exposures in their past, and they've got Lyme, but then they wound up traveling down to Mexico, and they got a stomach situation that led to diarrhea, and they came back and were never the same again. That may mean intestinal parasites. I might go after that first, okay? But if I've got somebody that's got Lyme, mold, and parasites, I might, and I'm not quite sure which one's the most significant factor, I might. Boy, it's hard. I just don't have a general rule on that. I really size it up based on the full picture of the patient. So I'm sorry, I can't really comment on that one. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I have to take more of a detailed history to find out what's going to be the more important one to go with. Okay. All right. I will tell you, there's people I've gone after mold toxicity because I really thought, based on the history, that was the most significant thing, and then never had to treat their Lyme, even though their testing was very positive for Lyme and they have marked histories of tick bites, for instance, okay? So just because we find Lyme infection in you does not mean we need to treat. There may be other causes of what the problem is, okay? All right. And keep in mind, all these things, the thing they have in common is they all trigger excess cytokines. Remember, I described earlier that Lyme disease is a syndrome of excess cytokines. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Katrina. Hello, Jill. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have a question regarding weight gain with Lyme and Babesia. I eat a very clean, very low carb, sometimes ketogenic diet. I recently had thyroid labs done and all parts were normal. I was reading your article on thyroid. I'm thinking of taking some natural thyroid. What are your thoughts? All right. So weight in Lyme has a couple components, one or a few components. One can be inactivity. So you're just not burning enough calories. Okay. Number two can be low thyroid. Number three can be the excess cytokines interfere with a chemical called leptin that's supposed to regulate your fat cell size. All right. So if you're having excess cytokines, that interferes with leptin regulation of your fat cell size and you're going to gain weight. And so often in that kind of a situation, you're not going to have benefit getting rid of your weight until you get Lyme knocked down enough that the cytokines are lower, that you're not having dysregulation of the leptin fat regulation system. Okay, so just to let you know, still, because cytokines are such a big issue and can lead to leptin fat cell dysregulation, I would still be on all the anti-cytokine approaches that I mentioned in the Treat Lyme book. I mean, definitely be on 500 milligrams 3 times a day of liposomal curcumin variety, for instance. Okay. Now, regarding thyroid and thyroid testing, so keep in mind that when you look at thyroid tests, the tests that are reported by labs are based on population normals. Okay. So a normal range that we would see in all people in the population. And most labs, when they report a normal range, what they're doing, they're pulling thousands of people off the street, they're testing, and they're trying to figure out what is the range of that for people. And then we say that what is normal is within something called 2.5 standard deviations of the mean, the middle, okay? What all those words mean is we define artificially that 95% of people are normal and 5% are not. 2.5% at the low end, we call artificially abnormal, and 2.5% at the high end, we call artificially abnormal, okay? All right, so that's one point. All right, now, population normal does not mean individual normal. All right, so there have been some studies that were done in Scandinavia on thyroid that looked and followed people over the course of a year. And in those studies, they looked to see what was the variation that occurred in their thyroid studies over that course of the year. And what they found, and I may be correctly, and I wrote about it, it's in my paper that I published, but I'm blanking on the exact number. But I think it was that the average range over the course of a year was about a width that was equal to 20 to 50%, I believe, of what the population norm is, okay? So a person's normal, all right, so if population norm is here, somebody's normal may have only been this wide all the way down here, all right? All right. So what that means is when somebody tests normal, we don't know if at that moment we test, is it normal for them that their level is where it's at? Is it based on what their normal was before they got sick? In other words, they may be falling into population normal ranges, but the actual level we get back may be abnormal for them based on their history of what their normal levels would be. Okay? So person normal is not population normal. All right? So keeping that in mind, I often will treat for thyroid even when somebody has low thyroid symptoms if they have enough low thyroid symptoms, all right? And so things to consider would be temperature intolerance, muscle achiness, fatigue, dry skin, hair falling out, changes in your menstruation, are you having abnormal periods or not? Weight gain issues I might look at. So if there are enough symptoms that look like low thyroid, even in face of low thyroid studies, I might give thyroid. Okay. Now I got to admit, that's kind of a controversial opinion. My medical board, for instance, is not too happy with me about doing such things, but there is a rationale behind doing that. And that is based on the idea that a person can have clinically low thyroid based on their symptoms and still have normal testing, because that testing is based on population normals And we don't know what their individual numbers were. We may not know what those were before they got sick. Okay. So I would use some thyroid in that kind of a situation. Okay. Good luck to you. Hello, Amber. Let's see. What are your thoughts about pulsing antimicrobials during long-term chronic Lyme treatment? I'm running with the Lyme that is still making me sick is just hiding, even though I take a biofilm buster, but have been on the same antimicrobials for many years. Okay. So I do like pulsing for the Lyme germ. I don't like pulsing for Bartonella or Babesia. And the reason I don't is I think they replicate too quickly and will come back during the phases that you're off. Okay. All right. So why pulse? Well, there's in the last couple of years, there's been some research published that has shown that something we have thought for a long time is going on in Lyme is going on, and that is that Lyme has the ability to develop what are called persister cells. All right. So what a persister is a form of the germ that slows its metabolism way down, kind of goes into hibernation when it's been exposed to antibiotics on an ongoing basis. All right. We know that happens in leprosy. We know that happens in tuberculosis. And there's been speculation over time that it probably happens in Lyme. We now have some laboratory experiments that do support that idea. And one of those was some Petri dish experiments that were done out of Northeastern University in Boston that got published, I think, a couple of years ago now. And in those experiments, they grew Lyme in the lab, exposed them continuously to antibiotics, and were able to show that persisters developed. And I think in that experiment, it was 20% of the spirochetes developed into persister cells and 20% of the cysts developed into persister cells, okay? And in that experiment, then what they did is they experimented to see what would happen if they stopped the antibiotics. So they stopped them by washing them off the Petri dish so they could clearly stop them. All right. And keep in mind, we can't stop something that quick. I mean, when you wash something off a Petri dish, it's gone. If you stop an antibiotic, it's going to take a few days, still maybe a day or two for it to get all the way out of your system. Okay. But what they found is after 24 hours, the germs had come out of the persister state and were back into their normal germ state. And then if they went in again and redid the antibiotics again, if they did that starting and stopping 4 times, where they waited long enough to see the germ had woken up, that they completely wiped out all the Lyme, including all the persister cells. Okay. So that experiment suggested that if you pulse in some frequency, that you're going to be able to get rid of persister cells. All right. Subsequently, Dr. Zhang out of Hopkins, who is a former tuberculosis researcher that's now giving some attention to Lyme, he's been experimenting doing various combinations of antibiotics and trying to see what might work well for persister cells. And he's finding in his experiments that pulsing is not a good way to go, at least based on those experiments. Okay. All right. So he is showing that there are some other regimens that might be helpful. For instance, one of the ones that he's shown that can be helpful is to use continuous cefuroxime along with Bactrim, which is a sulfa antibiotic, along with doxycycline. That triple combination is effective for persister cells, at least on Petri dish experiments. Okay. So the information we have about pulsing and persisters is a little bit conflicted. All right. All right. So what I find, though, I will try pulsing. I like doing it a number of ways. One is I like to do a 4-day on, 3-day off, and I try it. And I see, does somebody get better over time or not? Pulsing doesn't work in everyone, okay? Another way that I'll do pulsing is to be on it for 2 months and then off for 2 months, all right? And I do that based on ideas and an idea that was developed by Dr. Burrascano when he was still managing Lyme. And he was hypothesizing that when people couldn't get better, that they're at a point their germs just stopped, basically slowed their growth down so much that they just ignored it, okay? It's kind of what we call persister cells, all right? So what I will do at times is I'll have people do 2 months on, 2 months off. And I have a large number of people that they've been stuck in their treatment. If I do that, they will actually start getting better. So my best case is a woman that I did this through 4 different cycles of 2 months on, 2 months off. That's one cycle. We did it 4 times. And her energy jumped from about 1 to 2 out of 10 up to about 7 to 8 out of 10. She's probably been the best responder I've seen with this, okay? What I think happens when you're doing that long pulse of 2 months on, 2 months off is that, yes, the germs that have been persisters wake up, come out of hibernation, all right? But I also think what happens is forms of the germ that have moved into biofilms come back out of the biofilm. They're easier to treat when they're not in biofilm. And some of the germs that have moved into cyst forms when they've been stressed by antibiotics come back out of those cyst forms, and they're easier to treat that way too, okay? So ways that I approach this idea of persister cells and treatment that becomes difficult is, one way is 2 month on, 2 month off antibiotic regimens. Another way, sometimes I'll do 1 month on, 1 month off. I will periodically try a 4-day on, 3-day off, although I have found that may not be as useful. I think probably because during that time, you don't have enough of the germs that come back out of the cyst form and out of the biofilm, okay? I've tried the Zhang protocol, where you wind up doing a doxycycline, cefuroxime, and Bactrim continuously. I get some benefit out of that. And then finally, I'm using an idea that has been put out by Dr. Richard Horowitz of using a leprosy medicine called Dapsone that seems to have effectiveness against persister cells in leprosy. And his experiments on a limited number of patients in his practice suggest that it can have benefit on patients that are locked in their Lyme treatment. He's finding the best benefit if he includes that Dapsone along with doxycycline or rifampin. That's another persister cell regimen, okay? So what would I call persister cell or treatment-resistant regimens? I like to use either Dapsone mixed with doxyrifampin. That's one way. Some people get benefit that way. Another option is the Zhang type protocol, cefuroxime, Bactrim, doxy. Another option is to do 2 month on, 2 month off cycles of your antibiotics. Those tend to be the big ways that I tend to go when I got somebody that's plateaued and just not getting anywhere. I might try any of those. Okay. All right. And thank you for that question, Amber. I appreciate that. Good luck to you. Let's see. Hello, Lisa. Good evening, Dr. Ross. Do you incorporate stevia in your treatment of Lyme? If so, what daily dosages would you recommend? You know, I did at one time. So stevia, everyone, is a plant that has a sweet taste, also a little bit of an odd bitter taste to it too, but or an aftertaste that you get with it. But it's used as a sugar substitute. Okay. And Eva Choppy, who is the one that did those Banderol cemento experiments I was telling you about earlier, she's been trying to do some experiments looking at ways to treat persister cells. And she did experiments using stevia. And her stevia experiments look promising on a petri dish. It looks like it did get rid of some of the persisters. Stevia also looks like it has the ability to break down biofilms on petri dish experiments. But boy, and using it in real life, I've just been really disappointed by it. I think what the problem is, I don't think we can get a high enough concentration. I think stevia partially gets destroyed. And this is my opinion. I think it gets destroyed in a way that it just cannot get well enough absorbed to help a person. So I'm not using it these days in my practice. Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. Hello, McKay. Hi, Dr. Ross. I've been watching your webinars for a few months now and bought your book, but I am so ill and I am having a hard time keeping it all straight. I think the cytokines you have talked about a lot may be what has really caused the downward spiral. Here are my symptoms I keep getting and last for weeks. First, my arms get really painful and feel like my skin's too tight. Rubbing or massage do nothing. My tongue is just raw and painful to eat or swallow. I get real itchy all over for a few days after it starts, just claw at my skin and eyes. I get really bad insomnia where I am exhausted. And McKay, I just want to see if I can find another part to your question here. Just a minute. Yep, there is. 5, get a bad headache and fatigue is just overwhelming. 6, then the pain that is usually controlled by pain meds is just awful. I begin to have these twitches or tremors like things whenever I am still or starting to fall asleep. I really just hope when I get this bad, it seems to keep happening. All right. So, McKay, thank you for listening that all out. I'm sorry that you're in such a difficult situation here. I guess I give you a few observations. I'm not going to be able to answer your question because it's too complex. I would need to ask you a lot of questions, unfortunately. Um, and we can do that. I mean, if you want to, you can set up an internet-based visit with me where I can help review your care and try to come up with a more thought-out process and approach for you. Okay, but let me make a few observations, and I'll show you where you can get information about my consult service, where I visit with people from all over the world, actually. Um, so what you wanted, so a couple thoughts. Number one, the Lyme germ is unique compared to yeast, compared to Babesia and Bartonella, of these infections that occur in Lyme, in that it does give a cycling of symptoms. And usually it's going to be a worsening that occurs about every 3 to 4 weeks. So if you have a pattern of decline in your symptoms worsening on a 3 to 4 week cycle, that is suggestive of Lyme being the active problem. Okay? All right, that's one comment. Okay? Now, the other thing I saw in your list of symptoms is itching, raw mouth, red mouth, sore mouth. And those things make me think about yeast being a problem. Now, yeast can cause periodic symptom flare depending on what you're eating. So if you have foods that are more sugary that feed yeast, you may see symptom flares in the way you describe from yeast. Okay, so why is yeast a big deal? Well, if you have too many yeast living in your intestines, they trigger cytokines to be made, like I've been talking about. Okay, too many yeast also release neurotoxins that, when they start growing too much, will cause your thinking to be difficult. When you have too many yeast, the immune cells that line your intestines sometimes will react against them allergically and release histamines that give you a lot of that skin itching, for instance. Okay, so if you have yeast, I would start there. If you need, and take a look at my resources about how to treat yeast and diagnose it, you have access to my Treat Lyme book, okay? But this is really complex, what you're trying to manage on your own, and it might help if I can help sort this through with you, okay? So let me just do a quick screen share here. In the Treat Lyme book, take a look at my online consult page here. And read anyone that wants to do this, read all the way through this, okay? It describes everything. It will probably save you a lot of questions that you might try to ask Christine, my receptionist, for instance. I talk about the requirements. There's a disclaimer about it, and there's even a consent form that you have to click here. Read through this whole page. Here we talk about how do you set it up, but read through the whole page, okay? And so I'd take a look at that. I'd be glad to go ahead and help look at this with some more detail based on what's happening with you here. Okay? All right. Thank you for the question. Good luck to you. Bear with me here, everyone. I'm just finding the parts to McKay's questions. All right. Hello, Dwana. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Hello. I don't know if that's I'm not seeing another part to your question. Oh, yeah, here it is. I see there are other parts. Let's see, a couple of questions. If you had a patient with high eosinophils through blood work, how would you treat them? And lastly, since I've had Lyme 5 years, I have horrible heart palpitations every night when I wake, along with anxiety, sweats, and runaway thoughts. I take GABA, L-theanine, L-taurine. Actually, let me answer first part of your question. So eosinophils are a type of white blood cell that we often can see elevated with parasites, all right? So I would be asking you a lot of questions about, have you traveled to places you might have picked up parasites, like less developed countries? I'd be asking you questions about, have you drank from well water? Well water, even though well water is often tested, it's not always clean. And I would consider, do you might have parasites? I will tell you, parasite testing is not the greatest. You can have parasites and they're not even seen because they're hard to see. And sometimes what I'll do with eosinophilia, for which it's not clear there's parasites, I may still even just treat for parasites. The universal anti-parasite medicine, a medicine that treats any kind of parasite that I like to use, is something called Alinea, 500 milligrams twice a day for 3 weeks. That's what my approach would be with something like that. Okay. All right. Then let me see if I can find the second part to your question here. Can't see it. Oh, the wrong question there. All right. So, Dwana, in terms of just, I don't see the rest of your question, so I don't know what the actual question is, but I would just point out heart palpitations, anxiety, sweats make me wonder about babesia. Okay, take a look at the article that I've written in the Treat Lyme book about how to diagnose babesia. You'll find it in the diagnosis chapter. See if enough of that applies to you. Keep in mind, you can have Bartonella, you can have babesia with negative testing. And so often we got to make our decisions to treat for those based on what the symptoms are. Okay. All right. So I would wonder about what you briefly wrote here as to whether babesia might be part of this. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Oh, let's see here. Hello, Donna. Let's see. What do you feel about hyperbaric chambers and ozone therapy? All right. So ozone and hydrogen peroxide and high-dose vitamin C and hyperbaric oxygen are all oxidizing agents, okay? And the way that oxidizing agents work is they actually damage the membranes of the germs and the DNA of the germs, which can kill the germs. Now, hyperbaric oxygen, however, has been shown to actually, one thing that hyperbaric oxygen can do is when somebody's getting it, one thing I like about it is if they're on antibiotics, it forces the antibiotics deeper into the tissue so you get better killing that way too. Hyperbaric oxygen has been shown that even though it's an oxidizing agent, it actually promotes greater levels of antioxidants to be made inside of cells so the cells can be protected. I do have a concern about ozone and hydrogen peroxide and high-dose vitamin C, and that those oxidizing agents may be damaging your own cell membranes. Now, on a limited basis, maybe 5-6 treatments, probably not going to get much damage. No one's done research to look at long-term repeated treatments of those oxidizing agents to understand, does a person's own cells get injured by being on those, okay? In theory, like hyperbaric oxygen, those treatments also cause the cells to generate more oxidizing agents, but I'm concerned of repeated uses of those actually leading to greater damage. All right, that's just my concern. So I generally am not a big believer in any of them, to be quite honest with you, okay? All right. Let's see. MK, let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for all you do to keep us updated in Lyme. You're welcome. An unknowing Lyme sufferer for 30 plus years, diagnosed 2 years ago. I am curious to hear about the symptoms other chronic Lyme patients have experienced. Brain damage, vascular damage, joint muscles, and others. So I tell you, I guess this is not the forum where I can have other people share, so I appreciate that. But MK, what you might want to take a look at, there's I published this about 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, a rewrite, a refilming of an article that I've done on how to diagnose Lyme. And that is up and running now. And you can take a look there where I post a questionnaire by Horowitz, actually, as part of that video. And it has all the symptoms that people might experience with Lyme. Okay, so you might want to take a look at that. That's a pretty comprehensive list if you're wondering what symptoms might be. There are more than what Horowitz has that I show in that video, but by starting and stopping and pausing the video at various places, you'll be able to read the Horowitz questionnaire of various symptoms that people might have of Lyme. Okay, All right. So that article is free. I'm making the article on how to diagnose Lyme as a free article for anyone. If your friends and family, or you have people that wonder if they have Lyme, they're looking for a comprehensive article about how to get a Lyme diagnosis and what constitutes Lyme and how it is done, take a look at my latest article on how to diagnose Lyme. It's a completely rewritten, re-recorded article. It's even got a good PowerPoint presentation that goes along with it. So take a look at that. Okay. All right. MK, thank you for your question. All right. So listen, everyone, that's it for me for tonight. It's been good being here. I am going to take next week off, but we'll be back 2 weeks from now to do another one of these webinars. All right. So look tomorrow. In tomorrow's email, you'll get an email from me letting you know that the recording is ready. And keep in mind, you can either look at it on the site. Also, around that same time, I'll be posting it up on Facebook if you want to look at it there too. If you do have it on Facebook, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with people you think might get benefit. And when you get the email from me tomorrow, also share that from people you think might get benefit. The more people I can help, the better. And I'm trying to help as many people as I possibly can with these webinars and the information I put out in the Treat Lyme book and the recordings that I put up as well too. So I'd appreciate if you would help me with that. Okay. Tomorrow morning's email, also, I will have a sign up link for the next set of webinars. Okay. So you can sign up. I'll put that together tomorrow morning as well too. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks if you join me back here again too. All right. In a couple of minutes, here in a second, I'm going to redirect you back to the Treat Lyme book, to the page where you can actually sign up and subscribe to the Treat Lyme book so you can read all of those articles. Keep in mind, I see a lot of questions here where you're asking me questions that if you just got into the Treat Lyme book, you'd probably find the answers for it. It's a good resource. Keep in mind, when you subscribe, you're helping me with these webinars too. You're supporting the time that I put into this. All right. So thanks, everyone. I wish you well and look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Good night.